So he's had a couple of flops. Well, who hasn't?
You have a new book in mind?
Oh, of course he does.
In the movie, your character had been through a lot of adversity, and he struggled a great deal, which you embodied so well. What do you think was a source of strength for Charles Dickens?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I think, he clung very tightly to his own creativity and this fire that was clearly burning within him, even if sometimes it was the wrong flame. And so, I think he really treasured his children and treasured his family, even though his creative process put his marriage under great strain at times. But I think, his ability to bring forth these massive ideas that he had going on, these really sort of, I think he saw social injustice on a really epic scale at a time when people weren't fully getting it. Yeah. And the value of that and the responsibility that he felt to that really, I think, drove him quite fiercely.
One of my favorite lines from the movie was that no man is useless if he lightens the burdens of others.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a Dickens.
Yeah, I mean, and that's Dickens basically, and that theme runs through pretty much everything he writes. And I think it's probably historically, because he's had the other shoe on. He's been through hard times. He's been through the best of times and the worst times, so he can see both sides of the fence. And that's what his books and his fiction have always done. They've kind of shown you both sides of the fence, and
it's that phrase that really. I mean, in our film we have it that it's a sort of an aphorism that his dad has taught him and his sister that they've grown up with, and it's that moment when he realises that this is actually a valuable thing to have learnt from. As much as he might resent his father for many other things, that saying, that phrase, and the hope that phrase contains is that's the moment of hope that turns the story for him, and that it enables him to sort of transform Scrooge and transform himself at the end of the film.
And he's not asking for a huge change. Lightens the burden of another. It's a tiny little thing. It can be so small.
The smallest
how
gift, the
someone
smallest,
lightens the burden.
Gesture of charity.
It doesn't need to be like some thing. That's all he's asking everyone to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is so important for all of us. And on the subject of his father, it's when it comes to holiday time, we all spend more time with our families, and most of us struggle with some of those relationships.
Okay. Yes.
So,
I don't understand. Does not confuse.
No. Yes, it's not. Go on. What's your question?
Well, no, please go ahead.
Well, I mean, for some people it's a very joyous time of the year, and some people it is a strange time of the year. And I think it is, that midwinter moment, it can be a bleak moment, and that's sort of the point of that solstice celebration. Really, is remembering that the light will return, and the hope that can be found in that sort of darkest moment, drawing together around the fire. That's an important cultural thing in any culture, I think.
Yes.
Now, I was the Grinch that stole Christmas. I hated Christmas. I was like, why am I celebrating Christmas? Let's just go. I hated it. And then, my other half is Australian, and I have all my in-laws in Australia, and we're in the sunshine. They do Christmas in the sunshine. And now I have kids, and I adore Christmas now. I'm obviously the first
you're
one
on the
in.
beach.
No, it's not that.
What's not to like?
I love it. I just love it. I mean, and then when you get a reminder of what it's all about, I think it's just a gorgeous time of the year, really, if you can kind of crack it.
What do you think was the turning point for your character? Did he forgive his father? What was it that made him realize the value that his father had in his life?
That's a big question. I mean, I think in our story, he definitely unpicking the lock of the Christmas Carol teaches him about redemption, the idea that, somebody that we might regard as mean or reckless can be redeemed. And I think the hope that he finds in that story in our film translates into a generosity of spirit towards his father and his mother that he maybe didn't always show because the shadow of what happened to his father being thrown into debtor's prison and him having to go off to the workhouse, that really did loom large over his whole life.
Sometimes as a youngster, it's quite hard to work out what the sacrifice your parents have been through, and you can't even rebel against it. And then later on in life, you look back and you go, "Oh my goodness, they went through that for you."
Yeah.
And I think that's a process he went through all through his life, but we kind of encapsulate in this movie. It's a really joyous process, and it's a lovely film for it.
Humbug.
What is?
Christmas.
What about it?
Well, I mean, what is it but an excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December?
Yeah, keep going.
A time for paying bills without money. A time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled in his own plum pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart he should.
Oh, Mr. Scrooge, you and I are going to do wonderful things together. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner.